Hello, everyone. I'm Arlindo, the philosophical artist, and welcome to Experiential Realism. I'm joined here today by Robert Waggoner, author of Lucid Dreaming, Gateway to the Inner Self, and co-author of Lucid Dreaming, Plain and Simple, Tips and Techniques for Insight, Creativity, and Personal Growth with Caroline Macready. Robert is president-elect of the International Association for the Study of Dreams, and a summa cum laude graduate of Drake University with a degree in psychology. He is also the co-founder and editor of the online journal, the Lucid Dream Exchange, which can be found on dreaminglucid.com. Robert also speaks frequently at national and international dream conferences. Robert, thank you very much for joining me here today. I've read your book years ago. I was instantly mesmerized, inspired, and basically I resonate with those experiences, which we'll talk about later. We will touch upon some of the subjects that you talk about in your book. But yeah, to start off, I'd like to know what we should say to people who want to experience lucid dreams for the first time. What should we tell them? How should they go about having their first lucid dream?
Yeah, it's interesting. Some people, you talk to them about lucid dreaming for the very first time, and that night they have a lucid dream. I mean, they just get so engaged and curious about it that they go on to have a lucid dream. But for the average person, what I would suggest first is you got to get into the habit of having good dream recall. And basically, the thing that I do when I wake up is I immediately ask myself, what was I just dreaming? Because I know if I don't grab it in that first 15 or 20 seconds, it's just going to evaporate, disappear, won't recall it at all. But if I immediately think, what was I just dreaming? Then I have a chance to get into it. And then the next thing is it helps to have a simple technique in order to induce lucid dreams or increase the possibility of having a lucid dream. And I'm happy to give you some simple techniques if people are interested. Just let me know.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, when I first started my practice, I didn't go into complex methods straight away. Someone said to me, if you want to have a lucid dream, simply look at your hands during the day, and then that behavior will carry into your sleep, and then you'll find yourself checking your hands in a dream, and you'll realize you're dreaming. And that was pretty simple, and I followed that advice, and it worked for me. I found myself looking at my hands in a lucid dream, and I had that aha moment. But I've realized that it doesn't work for everyone, and it seems like people are different. They learn at different paces, and what works for some might not work for other people. I mean, is that what you found in your experience?
Right. That's what I've found too. When I go out and give workshops or do online events, um, I normally provide about 6 to 8 different techniques because some of the techniques are really visual, and some people are really visual learners and really good with visualization.
Yeah.
And so they might do best with that. Other people are really suggestible. So the power of suggestion can really move those people along as a lucid dreamer. Other people are really, oh, they want to be sure it's scientifically based and all, and so I can explain the science behind some techniques, and it depends. Each person has their own unique belief system. Some people believe in pills and supplements and whatever, and if they have something like that, then that makes them happy, and they're more likely to have a lucid dream. So it really depends. But I'll tell you, if I was a beginner just starting out. Um, I would use what the early lucid dreamers did when the scientific movement of lucid dreaming began in 1980. And basically, that was the power of suggestion. So before you go to sleep, clear your mind, get rid of any day residue, and then just focus on the same suggestion over and over to make it your intent. And so, like a good suggestion would be, uh, tonight in my dreams, I'll be much more aware. And when I notice anything strange, I'll realize I'm dreaming. So tonight in my dreams, I'll be much more aware. And when I notice anything strange, I'll realize I'm dreaming. And so that's when you're walking down the street, and on the other sidewalk is a Hollywood actress in a bikini. You just don't come up with some weird dream explanation like, oh yeah, they must be filming a movie around here, and that's why that woman is walking down the street in a bikini. All of a sudden, if you've given yourself that suggestion, now you're much more aware, and you go, wait a second, that is strange. Oh, this is a lucid dream. I'm dreaming this. And normally the power of suggestion, it was the #1 technique that people used in the early scientific movement for lucid dreaming. So that's the one that I would use, and I would ignore some of these other techniques that people talk about online. Some of them take like 5 or 6 weeks before you have a lucid dream, and to me
Yeah,
that
they can
seems
really
just
get in
way
the
too
way
long.
because, yeah, I got bogged down with some of those techniques. They were so complex, that say to you, do first count to 100, relax, you have to relax, and he puts pressure on you, and then wait till you see some signs that you're in the hypnagogic state, and then you have to do this. And it's like you have to remember all of that. And in the end, it
Right,
ends up getting in the way of your goal, reaching your goal. And it's funny
right.
that you mentioned the power of suggestion, because I was just thinking, as you were saying it, I was just thinking that when I read your book, and as I was reading it, I would have lucid dreams. It's almost like your book was causing me to have lucid dreams. So no method needed, because I was reading about lucid dreaming and I was so excited.
Yeah,
I'd go to bed, sleep, and it usually helped. In the morning I would wake up, I would go to the loo, return to bed, and then fall back to sleep. Sometimes I didn't even have the intention. I wasn't even thinking about lucid dreaming, and it
right.
just came to me. Yeah. So your book really helped me without even
Uh,
telling me to
yeah,
do certain things.
yeah. I appreciate that, Arlindo. What I've heard from people all around the world who've read my first book, Lucid Dreaming Gateway to the Inner Self, some people said just in the first 50 pages, they had 5 lucid dreams. Obviously they were a slow reader and really getting into it. But what I've found is this: if you're really curious about something, and if you're really deeply engaged with what you're thinking about and reading about, then that kind of creates this psychological tension, that people want to experience a lucid dream then, and they want to
Yeah.
see, is it really like this? And so I've had people all around the world tell me that without doing any practices, just reading my first book got them so excited that boom, they started having lucid dreams.
I see. I see. I'll tell you what, could you tell me more about the awareness behind the dream? Because when I read that, it really resonated with me. I've had some experiences with that I've had the feeling that there's something there trying to communicate with me. And I remember, this is going to sound, well, might not sound crazy to you, but basically, I usually have like a plan of action before having a lucid dream, just in case I have a lucid dream, to
Right.
avoid hesitation, because if I hesitate, then that could basically lead to a premature awakening.
Yeah.
And one of the steps in a plan of action that I had maybe a couple of years ago, something like that, it's in my dream journal, was to visit the world of Minecraft. And basically the idea was, because my son was into it,
Yeah.
the idea was to try to experience in a lucid dream something radically different to the mundane world. So I wanted to see something really different. I wanted to see, can I really experience something that different?
Yeah.
And so I had that in mind, and then I fell asleep, and I was having an ordinary dream at home. And then suddenly I had the aha moment. Oh my God, I'm dreaming. But then in the lucid dream, I couldn't remember my plan of action. So I thought, right, I can't remember. So I'm just going to, as a default mode, I'm just going to explore what's in front of me, right?
Right.
Until it comes to me. So I was exploring an inaccurate replica of the neighborhood. So some things were very different, but everything was
Yeah.
bright and vivid. And I was looking at people, dream people, they looked very realistic. Everything looked realistic, apart from this one character that resembled like Dennis the Menace but made of like pixelated in 3D, made of bricks. And this character kept following me. And I was freaked out. So I began to move away from him because I'm like, oh, I'm trying to explore the dream, but he keeps following me. So I began to run, and then he starts running faster than me to stand in front of me, and he looks at me and he starts smiling. So as I turn, he starts moving and insists on being in my line of vision, in my field of vision.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I got really annoyed. It's like, stop, I'm trying to explore the dream world, and you're just standing there looking different and pathetic. And it wasn't until I woke up that it dawned on me, hold on a minute, he looked like something out of Minecraft. It's all, and then I realized, is it something in the dream trying to tell me, look, remember, this is what you wanted?
Yeah.
I mean, do you find people report experiences like that, like there's some kind of awareness or intelligence uh, behind a dream? I mean, what is that?
Right. I'll just tell everyone how I got into this idea of an awareness
Sure.
behind the dream. And that's why I call my first book, Lucid Dreaming, Gateway to the Inner Self. So back in 1975, when I was a junior in high school, I taught myself a technique to become lucidly aware. And so I was having probably 2 to 4 lucid dreams a month. But the problem was the scientific evidence for lucid dreaming didn't exist. And so I'd try to
Right.
tell friends, hey, I'm becoming aware within a dream that I'm dreaming. Oh, you're just having a dream about a dream. And I go, no, I'm aware. I can fly. I can do whatever. Actually, I taught some of my friends the simple technique, and they began to have lucid dreams as well. But it was in 1981, January that year, the Psychology Today magazine came out. And here was an article by Stephen LaBerge, a researcher, and he provided the scientific evidence for lucid dreaming. And I thought, oh my God, this is
Yeah.
incredible. Finally, it's validated. But for 5 years, I've been lucid dreaming all by myself and really kind of learning the principles and the techniques and just how the dream world operates and what the rules are. But then it was about 5 years after that, I was part of a group that for 3 years we had monthly goals to achieve in a lucid dream. And so there it was, 1985, that spring. One of the goals was find out what the dream figures in your lucid dream represent. And so, I was on a business trip in Chicago, and I remembered, oh yeah, I gotta do that task because it's all due here in a week. And so I became lucidly aware when I found myself I think in a parking lot, and I followed a woman into an office, and now there's a receptionist, 2 women, and a gentleman in a 3-piece suit. And so knowing it's a dream, I just walk up to the gentleman and I say, excuse me, what do you represent? And then the weirdest thing happened. Instead of the dream figure responding, which is what I thought would happen, all of a sudden, a non-visible voice boomed out a partial response, from high above him, blah, 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 blah. And so I looked up and said, blah, 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 what? And then it boomed out the entire response of what this gentleman represented. And so, I've done this enough to know that once you get the answer, you should wake up and write it down immediately before you forget. Or if you
Yeah.
go on with the rest of the lucid dream, 10 minutes later, you won't remember what the response was. So I told myself to wake up. And when I woke up, I realized that, oh yeah, that was a bit of day residue from the day before. But I began to think, well, why didn't the dream figure respond? Why did this apparent awareness and this invisible awareness respond? And so then I thought, is there an awareness behind the dream? Is there something there? And so after that, just like you doing your Minecraft experiment, your own personal experiment, that's what I began to do in all of my lucid dreams. I'd ignore the dream figures, I'd ignore the dream setting, and I would just basically speak to my unconscious mind and ask it a question like, hey, dream, show me something important for me to see. Or, hey, dream, let me experience this concept. And I began to have my mind blown. it was like, oh my God, there's a responsive awareness within the lucid dream state.
Wow.
And it really utterly, completely blew my mind. And so that's why, I'm glad you brought up this topic, because one of the things about lucid dreaming that I don't think people understand is that we're socialized to interact with others. And so when we meet dream figures, we just let that kind of socialization process, oh yeah, I'll
That's right.
interact with this dream figure. Hey, do you know I'm dreaming you? And all this kind of stupid stuff. But this idea of interacting with something beyond, that's something that you've got to make it this kind of conceptual leap and realize, okay, I'm aware deep in the unconscious or deep in the subconscious. If I ask a question, will I get a response?
Yeah.
And people have had their minds blown when they see that actually they do get a response.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. So basically the dream figures and the environment and dream objects and everything that we see, they're just mental representations, aren't they? You can just address the unconscious mind or subconscious directly, and it can come in the form of a voice or a feeling, or is that right?
Well, it's complicated, and so whenever you're dealing with the mind and the unconscious and subconscious, it's complicated. Here's what I would tell people. Normally, that's the case. Normally, the dream figures are representations or projections of your mental energy. But here's where it gets complicated. So, like this happened to me about 2 years ago. It was January 1st, 2022, and I went to sleep that night. It's just normal night. And all of a sudden, in the dream state, I see my deceased mother-in-law, Nona. And immediately I become lucid because it's so hilarious. I think she's been dead 10 years now, and finally she's coming to visit me. And so I just began to, crack up in the lucid dream. What was interesting is Nona didn't look like the age she was when she passed away, in her 80s. Instead, she looked like she's about 40 years old, and she was wearing a dress that looked like it was, handmade or that she had sewn. And she was kind of a seamstress when she was alive. So anyway, here's what I do in that moment. So I don't know, am I seeing a representation of grief or, some symbolic portrayal, something going on in my mind, maybe the New Year's Eve and all that kind of stuff, maybe something like that's floating around. Or am I seeing something that's aware and alert in its own right, something that seems to have its own life energy or spiritual force. So to resolve this, I ask her a question. I walk up to her and greet her, and then I say, Nona, what do you have to say to me? To see if she responds. Because if she's just kind of an empty, hollow dream symbol, she probably won't have a response. But if she's aware in her own right, then she'll probably have a response. And I say, so what do you have to say to me? And she says, I want you to realize that September is a very important month. And at that, I began to laugh. And I said, Nona, if you believe September is important, I'm sure it's going to be important. And she goes, no, I want you to realize that September is going to be a very important month. And I said, okay, got the message. And I told myself to wake up, and I wrote it down. But in the morning, I realized, I think Nona from the land of the dead is telling me my mom is going to pass away in September. And so I told my wife about the dream, and I told her, my suspicion is that Nona is telling me my mom is going to pass away in September. And so the nice thing about this gave me kind of 9 months to prepare. I called my mom more frequently. She lived about 8 hours away. And I'd call her more frequently and interact with her more. And then I told my wife, I said, look, the last weekend of August, we're going to drive down to my hometown and spend that weekend with my mom. And that's what we did. And the next weekend, the first weekend of September, she passed away. Had a heart
Wow.
attack and passed away. So So again, this issue of dream figures, I don't want to tell people that they're all projections of your mind, because then you find these non-conforming aspects, and that's when you realize that it's a little bit more complicated and all. But the beautiful thing, about the awareness behind the dream is that oftentimes the awareness behind the dream also can give you information outside of your own conscious knowing, or outside of your
That's
own
right.
egoic knowing. And that's when you realize that lucid dreaming is also showing you that there's layers of the self when you begin to interact with this awareness behind the dream.
I was going to say, when you describe the awareness behind the dream, it seems like it's something that appears to somehow transcend space and time, and it definitely goes beyond your own personal purview. And I've also read an article by your friend Ed Kellogg, where he talks about idealism, and he entertains the notion that consciousness could be fundamental. And I don't know if you've heard of Bernardo Kastrup. He has come up with what he calls analytic idealism, and basically he says the world is all mind, but what's going on? This is his theory. What's going on is uh, right now you're a human being, so you're disassociated from the mind at large, which he equates with Jung's collective unconscious. But it's not really unconscious, it's conscious, but in a different way. So basically, you're disassociated from, or apparently disassociated from, the mind at large. But he comes up with an analogy where basically reality is like an ocean. It's all water. So water is analogous to consciousness. And as a human being, your avatar is like a whirlpool. And he basically says the whirlpool filters in some information, but filters out most of it. And when I was reading that in his book, what it's called, "Why Materialism is Baloney," by the way. And when I was reading that, I was thinking, wow, so dreaming could be so. So he describes like a whirlpool, and around it, and you're in the center, and what goes around you is like your personal unconscious. So so it made me think: could it be that dreams, you perceive what's going around you in this whirlpool, so it's your own personal stuff, but once in a while you get more information from the mind at large, and it also reminds me of what your friend Ed Kellogg said about when he was doing his dreamatarian diet, and he commented, when I was following the diet, it seems like um, I was getting information that I didn't even know at the time. It's like it was more knowledgeable than he was. So, I mean, how do you view that?
Right, right. No, these are all great questions, and we could easily spend 2 hours just
I bet we could.
unpacking this question. But let me kind of explain Ed Kellogg and his dreamatarian diet. So Ed Kellogg, of course, wonderful lucid dreamer. He and I have known each other probably 30 years now, and he told me that sometimes in lucid dreams, he used that state in order to find out the optimal diet for him. And so Ed has a PhD in biochemistry, I think from Duke University. So he kind of holds the view that everyone has their own unique optimal diet and all. So he would become lucidly aware, and he might announce, "Show me the best foods that I can eat now, for my best health." And
Yeah,
he'd say, all of a sudden in the lucid dream, a table would appear, and on it would be, here's a giant pile of bananas, and here's, a whole bunch of avocados, and here's this, that, and
yeah,
the other. And so he realized that the inner awareness, or the unconscious mind, knew what seemed optimal for you. And then sometimes he would ask to, show me how best to improve my health, or tell me how to best to improve my health. And one time, this non-visible voice responded that he should use the I I don't know if I'm getting this right exactly, but the vitamin mixture suggested by Edgar Casey in session 332,
Oh,
point A.
yeah.
And Ed's read a little bit of Edgar Casey, but he doesn't know that there's a 332 point A. And
Wow.
and so he writes to the Edgar Casey Association in Virginia Beach, Virginia, and ask, about this, and they kind of don't give him the proper information. But later on, he finds that session and finds this incredible kind of supplement mixture that Edgar Casey suggested. And so that's one of the beautiful things about it. Again, you get information outside of your own knowing.
Yeah.
It just wasn't a random, just whatever, and it turned out to be a dead lead. Instead, it became a very important. But anyway, he recalled, he told me how the idea, he remembered one time asking for one of the best foods, and he got shown dark chocolate, and he knew it was dark chocolate, like kind of the original stuff. And so he thought it was kind of strange because, normally the dreamatarian diet was showing him to, not ingest sugar very frequently, but
Yeah.
here it was showing him dark chocolate. And he said he started to eat dark chocolate and enjoyed it. It wasn't super sweet because there's so much chocolate in it. And then 5 or 6 years later, oh, flavonoids are found in dark chocolate and really improve your health. And so again, what he realized by virtue of this is that he created an optimal diet for himself. He said it ultimately became what people called the close to the Mediterranean diet, but he had come up with it by virtue of listening to his dreams. And also another part of his dreamatarian diet approach was just that he told himself that if he ever saw a food shown in a negative light, he would stop eating it. And if he ever saw it in his dreams in a positive light, he would have more of it. So like, for
Wow.
example, he might be watching something and see, a bunch of bacon fall into the dirt, and something that, and then okay,
Avoid bacon.
I'm gonna avoid bacon. And he'd say other times he'd have dreams where there'd be a spotlight, on a particular food, like the heavens were saying, eat this, and he would add that to his diet. But it's made him very happy to have this kind of optimal diet approach. And I've seen it also in my own dreams. Sometimes I'll see dreams shown in or I'll see certain foods shown in a very negative light,
Yeah.
and sometimes others in a positive light. So again, that's just one practical approach to using this awareness behind the dream. But
Yeah.
but you're right. You do on occasion get information beyond space and time from the awareness behind the dream. So you realize that the awareness behind the dream is a full distance from the ego and conscious self. It's a different magnitude of awareness.
Yeah. You see, I was also thinking about your experience at the end of your book, Gateway to the Inner Self. At the end, you have an experience where you're in touch with nature, and you I can't remember properly, but maybe you can recount the experience. But it makes me think like that you were at one with everything, like you're so in touch with nature. And it makes me think of idealist metaphysics, like the idea that it's all mind, or we're living in a collective dream, so to speak. And what happened at that time, I found that really fascinating, because it
It's a,
goes beyond dreaming, and it goes, it starts to touch upon experience, not just the experience of dreaming, but mundane experience, and then you feel expanded. I mean, can you elaborate more on that?
right. So what I want to kind of get across to people here is that when you begin to perform practices in a lucid dream, um, it it affects the person more than just the dream, that individual dream. So for example, let's say in my second book, Lucid Dreaming, Plain and Simple,
Yeah.
I have a chapter on, or we have a chapter on meditating within a lucid dream. And so you become lucidly aware, you ignore everything, and you begin to meditate. For me, that means emptying my mind. And I'll tell you, you'll have some of the most profound, transcendent experiences. And you don't have to wait, 5 or 10 minutes of meditation to get there. In 20 seconds, boom, you're moved into an
Wow.
incredibly deep state. But here's what myself and other lucid dreamers have noticed. Once you do that like 5 times or so in a lucid dream, all of a sudden you notice in your waking experience when you begin to meditate, boom, what used to take you 20 minutes to get down to this deep level, now all of a sudden in 5 or 6 minutes, you've gotten there. And so the reason I bring this up is what I'm trying to say is interacting with this inner awareness,
Yeah.
I realized was beginning to change my intuitional self. That suddenly I had knowings that I can explain, but I began to accept. And so what I'm saying is by interacting with the inner awareness, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 times in lucid dreams, all of a sudden that made me more in touch with my um, inner awareness. And so the example you brought up is in the final chapter of my first book. But my wife and I were on a 7-day trip down the Colorado River through the Grand Canyon.
Yeah.
And so you get on these boats and you basically sleep out on the beach on the sand each night, and you can't get any cell service down there, and so you basically leave this world behind, this electronic world behind, and return to a natural world. And one
Wow.
thing I realized is almost instantly my dream life just exploded. And I began having just profound dreams and also a few lucid dreams that were really profound too on this particular boat trip. But about the third day, we pulled up to where Havasu Creek empties into the Colorado River. And so the boat captain tells us, everybody get out and go up the trail about, a mile, and then you'll get into Havasu Creek and go up another half mile and you get up to Havasu Falls, really beautiful. And so I look around and my wife is helping the most elderly person, scramble up the rocks to the trail and everything. And so I think, okay, we're going to end up helping this the slowest person. And so we finally get down to the creek, and the water is so it's kind of creamy because I don't know, there's all this, I don't know if it's limestone or what it is in the water. It's really a special kind of water. And so outside is, 99 degrees. It's Arizona in August, but this creek, it's just like, oh my God, this is heaven laying in this creek. We're all just laying there, just soaking it up. And so I got into a meditative state, and I reached out to the canyon. And I said, Canyon, what do you have to say to us now? Or what do you have to say to me now? And I heard as clear as day, get out while you still can.
Wow.
And I was like totally stunned. I was not expecting that at all. I was having this moment of, kind of joy, being in this cool water and all. And so I kind of looked around and thought, am I sitting on an aquatic plant or hurting something here? That was really weird. And then I thought, that's just who knows what that was. So I kind of got back into a meditative state a few minutes later, and I reached out to the canyon, and I said, Canyon, what do you have to say to me now? And I heard this time, but more insistent, get out while you still can. And I stood up in the creek and I told my
Wow.
wife and all the people there, I go, we got to get out of here. And they go, why? This is heaven. This is beautiful. And I say, I tell them, there's something wrong here. We got to get out of here. And then all of a sudden I looked up through kind of the canyon, the slot canyon that this creek is on. And suddenly I could see, oh, right over there, there's a little bit of a thunder cloud, thunderstorm. And I said, look, there's a thunderstorm. There's going to be a flash flood come down there. We've got to get out of here.
Wow.
And so we pushed the elderly lady up the ravine to get her out and back on the trail, and everyone gets up. And now the boat captain and the crew are running up the trail screaming, "Get back to the boat! There's going to be a flash flood! Get back to the boat!" And thankfully, everyone from our crew got back to the boat, and then the heavens just opened up. But people have died in this canyon. There every year they'll have a couple of deaths, I believe, because flash floods will shoot through this canyon, and people won't be ready for it. So
Wow.
again, what lucid dreaming taught me, and it was in year 20. I had some profound experiences where lucid dreaming taught me that we exist within an interconnected oneness, that phenomenal reality is just kind of the movie screen of beliefs and expectations and focus intent. We have our own personal movie that we're sharing with other people who are having their own personal movie. Collectively, we call it reality, but actually it's our personally perceived experience that we're co-creating along with our inner awareness. But I realized that through some lucid dream experiences and experiments that actually a oneness exists behind all of that. And this oneness is the energy that props up phenomenal reality. And so I don't think of my experience as one supporting some pantheistic viewpoint that that and all, but it's more that all of us, whether we're a canyon or a frog or a tree or whatever, we all exist within an interconnected oneness, and we're all engaged in that interconnected oneness. From it, we derive the energy that brings us into being. But the phenomenal reality is a creative expression of that energy. And so in my second book, I have ways of showing people you don't even have to become lucid, that what we exist in right now is a type of dream. And by that, I don't mean to say that it's illusory or not important or a joke or something like that. What instead a dream is to me, a dream is a creation of the mind.
Yeah.
Yourself as you exist now, along with your larger awareness. That creates the dream that you then experience. And you run from, and you scream, and you have a nightmare, and God knows whatever. You find it all real in the moment it's happening. But if you become lucid, then you have a higher perspective and realize, oh, that's a dream monster. He's not real. And you can punch him in the nose or ask him, Godzilla, what are you doing here? This is a dream. So that's the beautiful thing about lucid dreaming. You start to see that you can wake up within the dream, or you can become aware within the dream and see it from a different perspective. And also, if you transfer those principles to waking life, then you can become to kind of wake up in waking life and realize that you also here exist within a mental co-creation. It's an important one, it's a beautiful one, it's an educational one, but nonetheless, this is a thought-mediated reality, and a real reality exists, but this is not it.
Yeah, no, that makes a perfect sense, really. I've actually been reading about near-death experiences lately. I've been doing my own research, and it seems that oneness, a sense of oneness and peace and love, seems to be a common theme. Like there are commonalities with many reported NDEs out there, and it seems to tie in with monistic idealism. And often these people say that their consciousness expands, like they become freer, and sometimes they wonder if they can get back into their bodies because the bodies seem so constricted. And they're often told it's not your time yet, you have to go back. And it's tied to dreaming because not too long ago I was watching a crime documentary with my wife, and basically it was about a serial killer, and it was a female serial killer, and she had killed this woman in her 20s. And so basically, the woman in her 20s went missing, and the FBI was doing an investigation, and the family was wondering, where is she? She hasn't got back in touch with us. And but the mother, we were watching this documentary. It had nothing to do with, afterlife, dreaming. It had nothing to do with that. But then they interviewed the mother, and the mother was saying, when she was missing, I had a dream that my father came to me, and my father's been dead years, and he said, "Don't worry, she's with me, she's fine." And I turned to my wife and I said, "Did you hear what this woman just said? It's got nothing to do with that, but she's reporting a dream that she had before they actually found out that she was murdered. So she's only missing, and she has this dream that her own dad comes and
Right,
tells her, she's with
right,
me, she's fine." And I find that really fascinating. And I've found that some NDEs tend to the people who have these experiences on the verge of death, they report things that they couldn't possibly know. Even knowledge of, they have these NDEs, they're dying, the doctors are trying to save them, and they go to what seems to be like another place, another state. And then they end up finding people that they thought were alive at the time. And then they come back and they say, "Oh, in this other place, not only did I see my deceased loved ones, I also saw this person who's supposed to be alive. I don't get it." And then when they go and investigate, they find out that that person died hours before the patient had the NDE. And
right,
and often they say, "Oh, we're this is where we live now. Don't worry about us. Everything's fine. And can you pass this message on to my family?" And
right,
I'm just blown away by these experiences, and under materialism, they don't have an explanation for them.
right, right.
And I
You
used
know,
to be a
there,
materialist, and I've done a U-turn just recently. I mean, I know you also
well,
you had an experience when you were stranded at an airport. You had a meeting in Charlotte or
oh,
something.
right, right,
I
right.
saw you on World of Lucid Dreaming on that channel, and you were
Yeah.
saying that you heard your brother's voice. Basically, they kept you stranded. I mean, if you want to recount the experience, I was also fascinated by that.
Yeah, well, I grew up in a large family. I had four older brothers and a younger sister. And I don't know when this was now, maybe 15 years ago, one of my brothers passed away. And so these folks down in North Carolina had invited me down to come and create a online workshop, that would go on for 30 days and stuff. But they wanted me to come down for 2 or 3 days and do all the filming. And so I decided to book a ticket, but I used a frequent flyer ticket on an airline that I had no status in because I would just want to get rid of those miles. And also, it was the middle of the winter here in America where I live, where we have a lot of snow. And so the day I'm supposed to fly away at 4 o'clock in the morning, my cell phone rings and your flight's been canceled. It's being rescheduled for tomorrow at the same time. And I'm like,
Annoying.
yeah, and it was because there had been some heavy snow. And then so I decided, I'm going to drive down to the airport, stay at an airport hotel, and so I can just jump out of my bed and get to the airport. And once again, now I'm at the airport hotel, and 4 o'clock in the morning, the phone rings again, and this is blah 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 airlines. We're canceling your flight, and I'm like, what is going on here? And so I I fell back asleep, and right as I probably slept for an hour, and right as I'm beginning to wake up, I hear my brother David say, as clear as you and I are talking, "Just
Wow.
be extra kind." And I thought, what? And then I heard him say it again, "Just be extra kind." And I woke up and I thought, what is going on? Why would my brother David, who's been deceased for 3 or 4 years, be telling me just be extra kind? So 20 minutes later, I decided, I'm just going to get dressed and go to the airport and try to get on the flight, even though they told me again it's been canceled. And so I go there, and now the airport is a disaster because all these people, their flights have been canceled because, 8 inches of snow and this, that, and the other. And they're yelling at the agent, oh, you've ruined my vacation. We're supposed to be on a cruise boat now, and this is going to cost us thousands. And they're just hassling and just dumping on this poor agent. And that's when it hit me. Just be extra kind. I got to the front of the line, and I sympathized with the person. I said, this is really unfortunate, and obviously you didn't create any of this, but still, if there's any way that you can get me to Charlotte, North Carolina today, I would be so appreciative. And she sat there for 5 minutes typing, and then handed me 3 tickets, and I got to Charlotte an hour later than I was supposed to. But again, if I had gone there, normally you kind of get infected by the anger and the impatience and the hostility. I mean, you just kind of feel it in the air, and you kind of get caught up in it. But hearing my brother tell me just be extra kind made me realize, okay, there's something going on here, and kindness will win the day. So again, the beautiful thing about these kind of examples is that you see the result, you see the positive result. It doesn't come from the ego conscious level of myself. It comes from something apart. And whether it's my deceased brother or the unconscious mind or the collective unconscious or whatever, I think a person could debate that, but still that shows there's something more. But to get to your point, there's a wonderful psychologist at the University of Virginia, Bruce Grayson, and he
I've
wrote
heard of him.
this.
Yeah, I'm actually reading his book. It's called
Yeah,
After. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, and he came out with this research study. He called it, I think, peak of Darien experiences. But basically, what he was showing is in a number of near-death experiences, like you mentioned, the people died, then they came back, but while they were dead, they picked up information that was outside of their knowing. That, oh yes, I saw,
Yeah.
little sister Susie was with grandpa, and that person, while they were having the near-death experience or were in the coma, they didn't realize that, little Susie had passed away, and all that kind of stuff. And so that's what I love about lucid dreaming, is you can seek out information outside of time and space and do your own personal experiments, oftentimes wake up with it and confirm it. And when you have those kind of moments, that's when you realize, okay, this phenomenal reality is not working necessarily according to linear time. When you get into the dream state or the lucid dream state, all of a sudden, sometimes you can experience things outside of space and time. And so that makes, these kind of what the apparent physical laws, that makes them all suspect now. And that's one of the beautiful things about lucid dreaming.
Wow. Yeah, it's amazing, really. Um, you know, your friend Ed Kellogg mentioned healing, using dreaming to heal, and he's got like 3 types of healing dreams: diagnostic healing dreams, prescriptive healing dreams, and curative healing dreams. I mean, throughout the ages, dreams have been used to heal people. Have you had any experiences where you've healed yourself, or even healed someone, or you received information that was of benefit to yourself or someone else?
Right. Just to explain this kind of category, or
Yeah,
series of categories. So a diagnostic lucid dream would be one in which you become lucidly aware, and then someone appears and tells you, look, you have this ailment and you've got to get it taken care of. And so a number of lucid dreamers have reported learning in the lucid dream state that they had a physical ailment that they needed to get attended to. It's also interesting that there's books out there of people who have learned about cancer by virtue of their dreams. And oftentimes it was a deceased loved one would show up and go, look, you have this kind of cancer. You've got to go and get this taken care of immediately. And the way the book got started was this woman went to a support group, after cancer treatment support group, and she learned that like 8 of the 20 people there had a dream in which they were told that they had cancer and needed to have it attended to. So this kind of diagnostic, it not only does it happen in lucid dreams, but it also happens in regular dreams as well. Prescriptive is a lucid dream in which you get a prescription on how to heal yourself. And so sometimes it might be stop doing this or start eating these foods, or whatever it is, there's some sort of prescription. I've even had lucid dreamers tell me that they were told what hospital to go to get treated, and also what doctor to ask for. And I mean, this is like 60 miles across town, a hospital they've never been to. They're told to go to that hospital and ask for this particular doctor. And they call up the hospital and they find out, oh yeah, they do have that kind of doctor who specializes in the area that the person has. So again, those are kind of prescriptive lucid dreams, and also sometimes they happen in regular dreams. But I think the most fascinating thing, and Ed Kellogg was kind of on the forefront of moving this forward, is the idea of using lucid dreaming for healing. And so back in the late 80s, Ed published a paper in a kind of academic journal or newsletter, talking about how he had been eating shish kebab and he punctured his tonsil. And his tonsil got all infected, and now he has red lines going down his face, and his throat hurts just horribly. But Ed hates to go to a doctor. And so after, I think, day 2 or 3, he decides that he's going to either try to have an out-of-body experience or a lucid dream and try to heal it. So he has a lucid dream, and I think he directs healing energy towards his throat in order to heal his throat and infected tonsil. And he said when he woke up, I believe 80 to 90% of the pain had gone away. Within 2 or 3 hours, the red lines that were streaking down his face disappeared. And he said that by virtue of that, he realized that a person could, deep within the subconscious mind, act to heal themselves within a lucid dream. And so in my first book, I wrote up about a dozen examples of people who apparently in lucid dreams had healed themselves. And then I included 2 or 3 examples of people who had no healing experience, but you could see in the lucid dream how they were full of doubts or ignored the advice, that they were given in the lucid dream or whatever, just to show that you can have healing, but also you can refuse healing. If you don't want to go that way in the lucid dream, you can refuse it. But since that time, I've received just tons of examples of people who healed themselves of ailments. And often these were ones that modern science doesn't have a way to heal. Like I remember someone read my first book. Her name is Kaz, and she sent an article into our free magazine, The Lucid Dreaming Experience. And basically, she had developed tendinitis. She was a DJ, listened to a lot of loud music all the time, and then she started to have tendinitis.
Yeah.
And she said that tendinitis was driving her crazy. And she began to explore it. She went to doctors. The doctors couldn't do anything. The medications didn't help at all. She said that she even read that some people had committed suicide because the tendinitis drove them crazy. I mean, it was
I can
hard to
imagine,
fall
yeah.
asleep and all that. So finally, she reads my book. She sees this chapter on people who healed themselves in a lucid dream. And so she did, like I explained in my book, she developed a plan to enact in her lucid dream. Because sometimes you become aware in a lucid dream and you can't figure out, so how do I heal myself? You got to kind of figure it out in the waking state so you have a plan ready to enact. And so she became lucid, she enacted her plan, and everything changed in the lucid dream. And when she woke up, the tendinitis was gone.
Wow.
She said she started jumping up and down on her bed. She was running around the apartment, jumping on the couch. she said it was so incredible to have the tendonitis gone. But I'll tell you, in our magazine, and again, anyone can get it for free. It's called the Lucid Dreaming Experience, and you can go to Lucid Dream magazine to see it. But I think it was the December 2023 issue. I interviewed this gentleman, Jose. He had a traumatic brain injury, and it was so bad that he could hardly function. But sadly, he lived in America, and we don't have national insurance or anything like that.
That's right.
His doctor basically told him, "You're going to be dead within a year, and there's nothing we can do for you." And so here's a poor guy, doesn't have insurance, doesn't have very many resources. He's been told that he's going to pass away. He has all this searing pain from the traumatic brain injury, just constantly. He somehow intuitively gets the idea that lucid dreaming might heal him. And so he gets my first book. He reads this chapter on healing and lucid dreams. He decides he's going to have a lucid dream and heal his traumatic brain injury. And incredibly, as he talks about, he said he had this incredible lucid dream where he directed healing energy to his brain. And he said when he woke up, it was like someone had pushed the reset button, to reestablish the normal operating parameters. And he said now he could function. Now he didn't have, pain. Now he didn't have any of that. He said he got a job, he got a girlfriend, he got married, and so he wrote to Ed and I like 4 years afterwards to thank us for helping him, because medical science had totally given up on the guy, and in a lucid dream, he healed himself. So again, when you read studies on deep hypnosis, there's like 10% of the population who can go really deep into hypnosis. And these are people who, if they're bleeding, they can stop bleeding. If they're told, now you'll stop the bleeding in your arm, they do. Or now you'll have a pain-free birth of your child, and they do. There's certain people who get to that deep level. But I think in a lucid dream, you're naturally at a much deeper level of the psyche.
Yeah.
And there, when you direct healing energy, you can have profound effects. And one time, my deceased father showed this to me symbolically in a dream, in a lucid dream. He basically showed me, how you can plug in something, an electrical device in your room, just plug it in there and now you have energy.
Yeah.
He showed me that lucid dreaming was like going to the electrical panel, and now you can start moving things and doing things at a profound level. And so that was kind of the example. Waking life is kind of like, oh, I'm going to plug this into the outlet there and get energy. And lucid dreaming is like, we're going close to the source. And now if we want to start playing around with the switches and seeing what we can do, that's what we can do. And so it helps to know what to do and how to do it and why to do it. And that's why I write books like I do, is that kind of give people some insight there.
Yeah, no, brilliant. This makes me think about the nature of lucidity, because I've often had experiences where, I compare ordinary dreaming with lucid dreams, so non-lucid dreams with lucid dreams. And I've made an observation, which I don't know if it's telling me something about the nature of dreams and consciousness itself, but basically, when I'm in a non-lucid, I seem to not be with it much, and the dream figures around me, the dream people, seem to know far more than me, and I'm like inebriated. But suddenly, when I become lucid, when I have that aha moment, often it's almost like time stops in the dream, and the characters freeze. And when I look at them, they appear to be mannequin-like, almost like I've drained their energy or I've drained their sentience. But then again, there are some characters that remain very much alive or with a semblance of sentience, and they can stare at me almost like they're saying, yeah, you've drained the life from these other beings, but not me, because we have our own sentience. It's almost like they're just telling me with their gaze, I see you, I
Right.
can see right through you. And it makes me wonder, am I in non-lucid dreams spread out and I don't have much awareness, but it's like spread out to other representations, other forms of other representations of people. So my consciousness is spread out. So it becomes almost that from their perspectives become unconscious to me. And I have this, I'm like a lost child in the dream. And then when I suddenly become lucid, it's almost like the consciousness aggregates in that dreamer perspective, and it drains the life. Suddenly these dream figures are just representations, just symbols, rather than it makes me wonder if some dream figures actually do have some kind of awareness that we interact with. I mean,
Right.
what do you think about all this?
Yeah. Yeah. In my first book, I talk about this because dream figures vary. All dream figures are not created equal. Some of them, like you say, they're hollow, they're like mannequins. You go up in a lucid dream and ask them a question, they won't even respond, they won't look you in the face, or they'll just respond with gibberish and all. But what brought me home to this idea of independent agents in a lucid dream? One time I became lucidly aware, and I'm flying around, and I see there's this whole crowd of people down there on this kind of parking lot area. And so just for fun, as I'm flying around in my lucid dream, I decide that I'm going to fly down and knock off the hats of everyone wearing a hat. So I loop down and knock off a hat, loop down again, knock off a hat, loop down again, knock off a hat. I think like the fourth time I come down to knock off a hat, suddenly from the crowd, this hand comes up and grabs me and stops me, just dead mid-flight. And I'm like, whoa, whoa.
Yeah.
And I finally struggle free and get on. But that's what I call an independent agent. Sometimes there's a dream figure in your lucid dream who seems as aware as you. One time I remember in a lucid dream, so I became lucidly aware and I walked into a library. And so I asked the woman at the reception desk, I said, would you go flying with me? And she goes, no, no, I got work to do. And then I went up to another dream figure, would you go flying with me? No, no, I got things to do. Finally, I go to the very back of the library, and here's this dream figure intently studying. And I go up to her and say, would you go flying with me? And she looks at me and smiles and she goes, sure, I'll go flying with you. And I'll tell you what happened, Orlando. She reached out, grabbed my wrist, and pulled me up through the library. We're flying up out of the library. It was the weirdest sensation to have a dream figure grab me and pull me up. And then when we got to the very top of the library, she goes, look. And she points down through the library, and down at the very foundational bottom of the library, I could see that basically there was kind of like a mandala shape. It was kind of like, she was showing me the kind of symbolic foundation upon which this library was built. And it was the wildest thing. But so again, sometimes you have these dream figures who seem to be as conscious as you are, occasionally almost even more conscious than you are. And the way I play around with this in lucid dreams, I'll become lucidly aware, and let's say there's 20 dream figures there, and I'll just announce, now all thought forms must disappear. So everything that's a formation of my thought must disappear. And sometimes everyone disappears, but sometimes, 15 of them will disappear, and then there'll be this group of 5 who are, like you say, they look at you like, yeah, didn't you know that, we weren't like those guys at all? Those are projections of your thoughts. We're a higher order within that. So dream figures vary, but you're right. Sometimes you meet independent agents who know as much or more than you do.
Yeah, I've often experienced dream figures that really seem aware, and they give me a stare which is spine chilling, and I've encountered these figures that have deep blue eyes, and they give me that stare, and I feel scared in the lucid dream. And I've also encountered some hooded figures and they seem to know a lot, or
Right.
somehow I get the impression that they could lead me somewhere else. I mean, do you have any experience like that with
Oh yeah. Yeah, in my workshops, I tell people there, if the dream figure makes eye contact and shows a lot of knowledge, in their gaze, they're probably a good one to ask a question of. Also, if I ever meet dream figures that are in robes, I always interact with them. They always have some insight and intelligence. And so for me, and I assume it might vary for others, but there's certain dream figures that are kind of like that they kind of have a clue that you're dealing with a higher order of dream figure. I remember one time, I became lucidly aware, and there were all these guys walking around with deep red Buddhist monk robes, and so I knew it was a dream, and I went up to one and began to talk with him, and he asked me, "Have you heard about the parable of the Buddha and the two arrows?" And I go, "No, no, tell me," because my knowledge of Buddhism is quite modest. And he goes, once upon a time there was a guy walking down a path, and an arrow shoots out and hits him in the arm. And he's not horribly injured, and he reaches and gets the arrow out and puts on a bandage and continues on his way. But as he goes on his way, he starts to think, why did that happen to me? Who did that? Why do they attack me? What's wrong with this world? And the Buddha said that by virtue of all that thinking, he created a second arrow of kind of a wound of the psyche that now he carried with him. And so that was, he explained it better than I'm doing right now, but that was the parable of the two arrows. The one that the guy was obviously going to heal from physically, but the second arrow, this kind of psychic wound that he carried with him, forever. And when I woke up, I Google searched parable
yeah.
of Buddha and the two arrows, and darned if there wasn't an exact parable
Wow.
exactly like this. But Robert Waggoner had no knowledge of that, had never
Yeah.
heard about it, never anything about that. But again, that's why whenever I meet a dream figure who's wearing a robe, so sometimes you can tell. One time I remember I became lucid when I saw these two guys in black silk robes, and I looked at them, and one of them got just the shock of his life to see me, and he could tell I was lucid. I could tell that he was lucid, and then he nudged the guy who was next to him, who was also wearing a black silk robe, and like, look, oh my God, we're here in this space, and there's another aware person. So when I woke up, I wrote some of my Chinese Buddhist friends. I said, do you know of Asian people who wear black robes, black silk robes? And they wrote back, and they go, oh, those are Taoists, Taoist monks. And I go, do Taoist monks do lucid dreaming? And they write back and they go, oh yeah, they do it, but they do it in secret societies. They would never tell the average person, that they have a secret society that, explores lucid dreaming, just like Buddhists have Buddhist dream yoga, that they have their own approach. And I go, oh, well, good grief. I met some of these guys, and it was quite something. So again, if I was getting on the lucid dreaming path and ever met someone in a robe, I would talk to them and find out what they're all about.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, given what happens to split brain patients and people with dissociative personality disorder, and sometimes they ask a psychiatrist to help me get rid of this alter ego is ruining my life, and then the next session it might be the alter ego saying, why don't you get rid of the other guy? You get cases like that, and it makes me wonder, um, could there be more than two perspectives, two centers of consciousness in the same body, vying for
Right,
control of the body? It makes me wonder about those things, and if they can communicate with you in dreams and argue with you
right.
even.
That's a great question. I'll tell you something that wouldn't be obvious. When I was doing research for my first book, I began to explore dissociative identity disorder, or split personality, like what you're talking about. And I came across this one therapist who had written some papers for different journals. And in one of them, in his psychiatric counseling with the dissociative identity disorder client, one of the client's alter personalities came through and told the psychiatrist that he was real. The alter personality was real. And so the psychiatrist said, well, is there some way that you could prove that to me? And the alter personality said, look, tonight I'll come and I'll make this client dream of nothing but bananas, something like that. And so then the next day, the psychiatrist was talking to the dissociative identity patient and said, so tell me, do you remember any dreams from last night? And the dissociative identity patient said, it was horrible. All night I dreamt of nothing but bananas. I don't know why. So again, one thing that's unfortunate about the field of psychology is that we do not have a very good understanding of the psyche and how it's formed, created, structured, and all. And so occasionally, like we've talked about, sometimes you can meet these kind of independent agents in lucid dreams and also sometimes in regular dreams, but also sometimes you'll see it reflected in the outer world. People who have had some psychological trauma, and then the ego self has kind of given up authority or has kind of a misshapen authority. And now these other aspects of the self come forward and, try to wrest control. I mean, it's like someone trying to grab control of the wheel of a car that's being driven poorly, by a drunkard or something like that. So anyway, it is unfortunate that we don't have a good understanding. I think lucid dreaming begins to show us a few things, that there's levels of the self. There's the ego conscious self, what we are right now, interacting with each other. But then there's also this larger awareness, and whether you want to call it the self with a capital S, like Carl Jung might have, or the inner self, or the double ego, or however you want to talk about it. There's something more going on. There's a larger awareness that we're part of. But then there's also these sub-personalities that for some people can be very pesky and can come up with strange ideas on occasion, or have obsessional focuses on certain things and all. I do think there's ways of working with dreaming that could help resolve these sort of things. But first you got to get people to kind of, understand that you can explore dreaming consciously aware and have new insights into how the subconscious works.
Yeah, that's so interesting. I mean, it's unfortunate that the idea that dreams are just dreams and they mean nothing, and they show us nothing, it's just illusions. And I mean, they are mental representations, but the idea that they have no meaning behind them, there seems to be this prevalent idea that, oh, it's just the brain doing stuff,
Right.
usually within materialism. And I find that really sad, because I think dreams have the potential to show us more about ourselves and how we relate to the world, and perhaps even the world at large. And
Right,
yeah.
right. That's a great thought. Well, I'm going to ask that we take a break here for
Yeah,
about
I
three
was
or
just
four
about to
minutes.
say, if you'd like to take a break. I was looking at my watch just now. But yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, no,
so,
definitely. I'll hit the pause button. There we
okay.
go. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about if you've heard of Alan Worsley's bizarre thinking. I remember reading a long time ago now that he had a lucid dream in the lab, and basically he was measuring his brain and that, and he had a lucid dream in a replica of the hospital. So it was like an out of body experience, and he found that his dream body was attached to the machines still, and he began to walk, and he left the hospital, and he was still plugged to the machines. And outside the hospital, it began to rain, and he said he knew he was dreaming, but in the dream he worried about the equipment getting wet, which was odd. And when he woke up, he realized, why was I worried about the equipment when it was dream equipment made of dream stuff? When I shouldn't. And then he came up with the concept of bizarre thinking. Even though you know that you're dreaming, you can have these strange thoughts that lack critical thinking. I mean, what do you make of that? It's really
Yeah.
strange.
Well, I I often quote a movie that came out here in the U.S. Probably 20 years ago called "The Adventures of Buckaroo Banzai," and the main phrase was, "No matter where you go, there you are." And so you know, in the lucid dream state, you can still be attached to certain beliefs. So if you believe that you're still connected to the equipment and the equipment is bothered by, too much water or rain, then you'll act on that belief. I mean, that's just how it is. And so that's one of the beautiful things about lucid dreaming. You begin to see the importance of belief and expectation. So in a lucid dream, if I believe that I can fly through this wall easily, normally I can fly through the wall easily. But if I believe or expect it's going to be hard to get through, I'll bounce off the wall, even though it's made out of dream stuff. So in a lucid dream, it reflects back to you your beliefs and expectations, your intent, your will. And so when you have those kind of experiences, like Alan Worsley was talking about bizarre thinking, uh, oftentimes it's you aren't lucid enough to let go of limited beliefs. But we all do it as lucid dreamers on occasion.
Yeah.
One time I was having a very long lucid dream and noticed my little sister was there, and I asked her if she could please take notes because I knew that it would be hard to remember the entirety of this lucid dream, but I would give her notes to take. And so she had a pad and paper and was taking notes as we went along in this very long lucid dream. And of course, in the morning, there's no little sister there with, oh, here's the notes from your lucid dream last
Yeah.
night. Yeah, but at the time, I believed that she was there to help me, and so the belief, kind of blinded me to the larger reality of the
Yeah.
experience.
I suppose that can happen in waking life. I mean, recently, me and my wife swapped rooms with our daughter, and I sometimes still find myself going into my daughter's bedroom because I remember it to have been my own. And
Right.
you kind of forget. Well, sometimes I go in the kitchen and I don't remember why I've gone there in the first place. So yeah, I suppose it can happen in any state of consciousness, really. Us,
But
you know.
but still, this issue of beliefs is really important because what I learned. I've been lucid dreaming for more than 40 years now. But what I learned as I went along is that, first I had to understand these reality creating principles of the lucid dream. And so belief and expectation and focus and intent and one's will help create the perceived experience that we call reality. But also I later realized that the larger awareness is also helping to create the experience that we then perceive. But if you don't understand that, then lucid dreaming gets very confusing. And in fact, oftentimes I realized my larger awareness was trying to break down my limiting beliefs that I held. Um, like, for example, when I first got started as a lucid dreamer as a little kid, I was growing up in the middle of America, lived in a family, every Sunday or 3 Sundays of the month, we'd go to church, and that was just part of our reality. But one of the first things that my larger awareness began to do, as I realize now, it began to show me past life experiences in the dream state. And it made me realize that this idea that you could live for 20 years and die and then spend eternity in heaven or hell was just rubbish talk. It's just not not explanatory and really nonsensical in many respects. But like I mentioned, my brother who passed away, the night he passed away, I became lucidly aware and was shown all of his past lives. And he had like 160 past lives. And what was interesting is they were all seated at a table in this big conference room, but the tables were shaped such that the entirety of all the tables together made the backward swastika that in Buddhism they call the wheel of samsara, or the
Yeah,
wheel of all these lives. But it was so wild to meet all of these past life aspects of him, because then uh, when I woke up from that, I began to see that, oh my gosh, it literally takes us more than 100 lives to figure out this physical realm and how to graduate from it.
yeah,
And you know, we keep coming back in order to learn, and in order to learn, I don't think it's karmic in the sense of being punished. It's more like, you know, the gaps in our education, our psychological and spiritual education need to
yeah.
be filled. And so we find the proper place to get reborn. This does remind me of a fun lucid dream that a friend of mine told me. Uh, her name is Suzanne, and she and I had done a lot of dream telepathy experiments together. But uh, but she told me one time she became lucidly aware, and she announced, "Now show me my life 2 years before I was born."
Wow.
So she asked this of the larger awareness. Now show me my life 2 years before I was born. And suddenly she says she finds herself in front of a house in a different region of the Netherlands where she lives. And so lucid, she walks through the front door, and inside there's the artist and his pregnant wife, who's obviously quite pregnant. And she can see this art all around the walls. And she realizes, oh my God, this guy is kind of a well-known regional artist in the Netherlands.
Wow.
And she looks around a little bit, and then she wakes up from the lucid dream. So she decides in waking life to begin to correspond with this artist. And, you know, she writes him an email, oh, I really love your artwork. And incredibly, he responds. And then they go back and forth, you know, like having a daily correspondence about things. And then she asked him, after they'd gotten to know each other, she asked him a question. Tell me, what was your life like in 1979? So this was 2 years before the lucid dreamer had been born.
Right.
And he goes, oh, that was such a pivotal year because my art was finally beginning to sell and do well. And my wife became pregnant, but at 8 months, she had a spontaneous abortion and lost the child.
Wow.
And all of a sudden, this lucid dreamer is beginning to think, was she the being who had been there, you know, planning to be born into that life, but instead, for whatever reason, you know, crapped out and decided not to. So again, this kind of shows you how wild lucid dreaming is, especially when you begin to interact with the awareness behind the dream. So sometimes you learn things that are just so outside of your own belief system, so outside of your own specific view of the world that it's really, truly fantastic.
And it's very hard to prove that these experiences are something beyond our purview. I mean, I've had one experience that I remember years ago now, where I had a lucid dream, but it was one of these lucid dreams where I didn't see inside of my bedroom. I was suddenly outside of the house as a floating point of consciousness, and I was overlooking my neighborhood, and I saw someone like a biker crash into one of my neighbor's vehicles. And then I saw my neighbor come outside the house, and he was really angry and, confrontational and that. And then when I woke up, I wrote it down. And
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
thought this seems really strange. And by the way, as I was floating, I knew I was asleep. I knew I was in bed, so I knew what was going on.
Yeah.
And 2 years later, that actually happened. Someone crashed into my neighbor's vehicle, and he came outside the house, and people said I didn't see it, but people told me, oh, this happened. And then I remembered my dream from 2 weeks ago, and I was like, wow, what's going on? And I've told this story to several people, and some people say, wow, that's a precognitive out of body experience, a precognitive OBE, or a precognitive lucid dream. Other people who think more materialistically might say, oh, maybe you saw your neighbor's vehicles outside, and you see bikes come and go, and perhaps your brain predicted that this could happen because we imagine worst case scenarios, and now
Right.
after the fact it seems like a precognitive dream in hindsight. So there's always someone there um, coming up with a more mundane explanation. But I somehow find that highly unlikely. I mean, why would I, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. There are aspects of it that are quite improbable, and altogether, it adds up to an improbability factor of, maybe 1 in 1,000 or 1 in 10,000, or something quite high. But you're right. People have precognitive dreams, but they do have these ones, like you're mentioning, that there might be a chance that you could explain it away, and all. But there's other examples where I think the amount of detail and the information that was provided is such that saying that, oh, your mind just created this, or it's a coincidence or whatever, just doesn't work. And so, it's interesting. I think there's ways that people can explore this more deeply, and all, and but again, I just feel like science doesn't want to see it. Even when they're shown evidence,
They
they
don't want to see it.
still they don't want to see it. And that's the interesting thing about science, because we talk about science and it's kind of this you know conceptual reasoning process and yada yada. But the problem with science is it's full of scientists. And scientists, if they don't want to see stuff, they just don't see it.
Yeah,
And I remember one of my friends as a professor, he had at the bottom of his email signature that, science advances one death at a time. And it's kind of like, a lot of times there's things that are brought forward, but the old guard, will just not let it happen. I mean,
yeah,
they fight it, shoot it down, bring up three other approaches. Even like Stephen LaBerge, when he first submitted some of his evidence, I think to Science, and then Nature, the journals Science, and then Nature. The first one, uh, they had one very positive review, and one other review said, this is impossible, this is a joke, this cannot happen, you can't become aware in the unconscious. And so I refused this. And so it got shot down. Then I think he sent it to Nature, and Nature said, they wrote back and said, oh, they weren't going to send it to anyone because this was not of significant interest in the scientific community. And
yeah,
so finally he had to go to a much lesser read journal before it finally got published. And even then, for the next 2 years, people in dream research, they fought him tooth and nail. The old guard did not want to agree. It was funny. One time I was at a dream conference, so I'm part of the International Association with the Study of Dreams. Um, and so I was at this conference, and this guy comes up, and he said, Robert, I hear you're the dream expert. And so this was a French Canadian, I think from Montreal. And so this guy was a Freudian analyst in waking life. He still followed Freud and was a Freudian analyst. He goes, so I understand you're the lucid dream expert. can you teach me a few techniques so I can become lucid and see what lucidity is all about? And I go, okay, do this and this and this, and try to have some lucid dreams. So a year later, I'm at the conference, and here walks up the Freudian analyst from Quebec, and he comes up to me and he goes, Robert, I want to thank you for your help. I managed to have 6 or 7 lucid dreams, but I want you to understand that it's still all about nothing but sex and power.
Yeah.
And so if you're a Freudian and you
Typical
believe that
Freudian.
that every dream is about sex and power,
Yeah.
then what are your lucid dreams about? They're all about sex and power. And so that's why this aspect of beliefs is so incredibly important. And that's why this other aspect of the larger awareness is important, because I could see how my larger awareness was making me crush limiting beliefs, get beyond limiting beliefs,
Yeah.
because these limiting beliefs that they keep you in this narrow tunnel, and you don't see anything this way or that way because you are stuck with tunnel vision. But when
Yeah.
your limiting beliefs start to get smashed down, then you can see a little bit more, and then it gets smashed down a little bit, then you can see a little bit more.
Yeah.
Then my lucid dreams taught me that I had to always resolve my fears, that fears also keep us constrained, and that we all stay in our comfort zone. And once you get to the wire and you get a shock, you retreat, you go back to the comfort zone. And so fear is like that wire. As soon as you get to fear, oh, you move away, you get back to the comfort zone. It showed me that I had to basically become fearless, and that's what I learned to do in my lucid dreams.
Yeah. You can
I
confront your
was able,
fears. Yeah, that's right.
so you can confront and resolve your fears. And it was funny, by year 17 or 18, sometimes I'd have lucid dreams where a non-visible voice would say, trust, nothing to fear. Or sometimes I'd see a banner in the sky in the lucid dream that said, trust, nothing to fear. It was
Yeah.
like at this point, I had gone enough, broke down enough limiting beliefs, that now my larger awareness was such that it was helping me in that, in those final years of going the distance. And that was truly invaluable. But again, science is beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah.
Scientists are not. And scientists, they're prejudiced, they're biased, they're
Yeah.
constrained, they're limited. Uh, they're lovely people. I'm not saying they're not bad people. I'm not saying they're not trying to get to the truth. It's just sometimes they don't understand the constraints that they themselves are underneath,
Yeah.
and they don't realize
Everything has to be a model, and they mistake the model for the map for the territory, as they say, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah. But that's one thing that I think about lucid dreaming. I think lucid dreaming shows us the inner physics, the physics of the mind. Because when you look at physics, I mean, whether it's a pulley that can, bring up a weight that's, 100 times more than a human could do, but with a pulley, they can now lift it,
Yeah.
or whether it's getting, 100,000 pounds of metal to fly, just if you shape the wings correctly and put some engine thrust on it, then by the power of physics, you can get this magical event to happen. But
Yeah.
but that's the thing about lucid dreaming. You can also begin to see the mental physics. And if you'd like to hear, I'll tell you and your listeners the way how you can
Sure.
see that the waking life is a type of dream, is a type of mental construct.
Yeah. Oh, there is that famous quote. Who's it by? He basically said, um, "Dreams are very brief," or something like that. Can we say any more of life, or something like that, hinting at that
Right,
life is just a dream, like the dream of life.
right.
I
Yeah,
can't
that
remember. Is
I
it?
think that might be in Hamlet. I think it might be a Shakespearean quote. But
Yeah.
but but I'll tell you, here's a way that if you'll work with this technique, you'll see how you exist right now in a type of mental co-creation. And so it's in the last chapter of my second book, Lucid Dreaming, Plain and Simple.
Right.
So here's what I ask people to do. find within yourself a neutral belief. So it might be, how you feel neutral about your hair. Your hair is not good, not bad, you're neutral. You really don't even think about your hair because you're so neutral. Or it might be about how funny you are. Well, I'm not really funny, I'm not unfunny, I'm kind of neutral. I'm just right there in the middle. I don't even think about it because it's nothing of importance to me. So find a neutral belief. And then 10 times a day for 1 minute, supersize that belief. So if it's about how funny you are, for 1 minute, 10 times a day, imagine that you are the funniest person on earth. There's never been anyone funnier than you. You are so funny. People laugh when you walk into the room. You are just, the king or queen of funny. You know, just do it for 1 minute because that's about as long as people can really focus, and then let it go. And then an hour later, 1 minute on how funny you are, and just zap it up, imagine it, feel it, energize it, that belief. Don't tell anyone you're doing this. Don't tell anyone what you're doing. Here's what will happen. If you keep doing this day after day, on day 5 or 6 or whatever it is, you'll be buying something at the shop and give the shopkeeper the money, and you won't even say anything really funny, but they'll burst out laughing. Or you'll say something totally innocuous and they'll burst out laughing. What you begin to see is that we are projectors of mental energy.
Right.
And I remember one woman who had attended one of my 30-day workshops. She did this, but she said she was 55 and she was really neutral about how attractive she was. She said when she was in her 20s, she would put on makeup and do all sorts of crazy things to be attractive. But now she's 55 and doesn't care. So she started to supersize how attractive she was. She said on day 4, a guy in his 30s asked her for her phone number. And she said she was so alarmed, she immediately stopped the practice.
Yeah.
Because again, we project energy out there and the world reflects back to us
Yeah.
some of what we're projecting out there. So again, I did this once working with a college classroom on the West Coast here in the US. And I came back later and the class told me some of the hilarious things. Like one girl, I don't know if she did it about her shoes or her hair or whatever it was, but she said by day 4 or 5, people were like, where did you get those shoes? Those shoes are incredible. And she's thinking, I've worn these shoes for 3 years. No one's ever said anything. And now today, 2 or 3 people have asked me about my shoes. I haven't cleaned them. I haven't done anything with them. What's going on? But again, we project energy, energy gets reflected back to us. And that's, of course, what's happening in a dream. Our energy gets projected out there. We see it, experience it, we respond to it, and come back to us. So again, the world itself is a little bit more interesting. We think we're
Yeah.
dealing with a concrete, objective world, and
And it's
we're
not.
not. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's one of the problematic aspects, because if you're a materialist scientist, you're dealing with a concrete, objective world, and tragically, that's not the case.
Yeah. Because at the end of the day, it's our experience of the world is only a mental experience. I mean, we have no evidence that there exists anything material beyond the mind, or anything that, dead matter outside of minds. I mean, there's no way to verify that. So, and even when we look at quantum physics, when we look at the subatomic world, we realize it's not really material. It's all the same energy, and it seems like it's made of phantasms of invisible forces. So there you go. I mean, it begins to look more like a dream, really, doesn't it? And I was going to say, um, actually, I lost my train of thought. Yeah,
Uh,
it's along
yeah,
those lines.
yeah,
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 and
it was fun. One time, I had a university student from Australia join one of my online classes for 30 days. And so I asked her, what are you doing here? Why do you want to take this online class? And she said, that she'd had a number of lucid dreams, but that she, as a chemistry physics major, wanted to experience what it was to be an electron. She
wow.
wanted to have a lucid dream and achieve the experience of an electron, firsthand experience. And so I told her, I go, look, that is a wonderful goal. I'm going to help you out as much as I can. But the first thing I want you to do is try to let go of all of your preconceptions, because those beliefs, those expectations are going to limit you, and you're going to limit the experience. And so in her first 4 lucid dreams, she kept trying to break down her perceived experience, her expectation. And finally, by dream number 5, she had let it all go. And so what she did, she became lucid. Then she announced, now let me find myself at the subatomic level. And she said, suddenly she found herself in this realm where everything was just vibrating,
Wow.
and then she announced, now let me become an electron. And she said, all of a sudden, she had this incredible experience of being attracted to and then repelled by, attracted to, repelled by, zipping around, all this way and that way.
Wow.
So I asked her at the end of it, I said, what was your big takeaway? What surprised you from this experience? And she goes, what really surprised me the most was the amount of joy that an electron feels.
Wow.
She goes, and think of this world that you and I are in right now. I mean, I can look around and I'm surrounded by billions, if not trillions, of electrons zipping around, at
Yeah.
this subatomic level. And imagine if all of that hum is just one of joy, just
Yeah.
the joy of existence, the joy of being attracted to and then repelled by, various forces, and just running with it. And it's really interesting, but I think that's how beautiful lucid dreaming is, that if you can let go of your preconceived notions, you can begin to have conceptual experiences that are so profound that really it'll really give you a new view on the perceived experience that we call
It's
reality.
it's funny you mentioned that, because and I remember this experience so vividly even today. Once I was trying to induce a wake initiated lucid dream using mindfulness meditation. So basically, I was relaxing in bed, and I was imagining like a lamp, and I was trying to focus on the lamp, and my mind would wander, and every time it wandered, I brought it back to the point of focus, and I did it patiently as many times as it took, and eventually I came upon this state. I didn't ask for it, right?
Yeah.
I came upon this state which was, it's hard to describe, to put it into words, but it was like a pure awareness. Like I ceased to be myself. There was no thinking. It was like a stillness, like and it was blissful. Like it was joyful, like a blissful stillness. And I felt free. And then it didn't last, because I tried to conceptualize it. And the moment I tried to conceptualize it, my first thoughts that came and weighed on me and completely destroyed the state were, uh, what is this? Who am I? Where am I? And then it began to try and form a narrative, but the narrative wasn't the original state. And it just makes me wonder, are we just pure consciousness capable of becoming anything, with infinite potential? And you know what? It makes me think of people who do impersonations, and I wonder if they kind of do this. I remember watching Jim Carrey doing an impersonation of um, Elvis Presley, and he was dancing around, and he was really like, it's almost like he became him. And then at the end of the performance, he said, he actually impressed himself, and he said, "Wow, I was him," and and that made an impression on me. It makes me wonder if they embody, they become, they have the concept in their minds, and then they believe that they are really that, because they have the potential, because all of us in that oneness, we
Right.
have that potential to be anyone and anything, even an electron, or, you know, and I've read some NDEs that people say they adopt a different perspective from their bodies, and they see everything that's going on. And someone even said that I almost felt like I was the wood of the chairs and the tables and the walls, and I became everything. And they find it hard to put it into words. It's almost like
Yeah.
they are the universe, but then we are the universe experiencing being a person. It's so weird. It's fascinating, isn't it?
You know what? One time in my lucid dreaming journey, probably about 16, 17 years in, I began to see lucid dreaming um, as projected mental energy. And so then I began to think about that. Okay, projected mental energy that becomes forms and shapes and narratives and all that kind of stuff. And so the next time I became lucidly aware, here's what I did. I decided to do Tai Chi movements in the lucid dream to draw all the energy back into me.
Wow.
And so I was sweeping all the energy of the projected experience back into me. And I remember that night, I think I had 3 more lucid dreams after that. And that's really rare to have like 4 lucid dreams in a night. I mean, most people, might have 1 or 2 or 3 lucid dreams a month. To have 4 in one night was really something. So again, there's different ways of conceptualizing it, but I think part of that kind of Tai Chi, if you do it in a lucid dreaming level, is to you know call back and reintegrate the the energy into yourself, and also so it's really interesting how you can play around with these kind of things. But again, it does help to kind of open up your mind a little bit, begin to allow yourself to explore things. You don't have to believe them or whatever, but you can't not believe them. You can conceptually open up to the experience. You don't have to believe it or not believe it, but you have to have that openness at least to explore it. Without that, you'll just get a reflection back of what you believe.
Yeah, no, definitely, definitely. Um, you were telling me about memory within. I don't want to keep you for too long, by the way. Just let me
Uh,
know when you need to go. But
okay.
I just wanted to mention, it seems to me that it's not just near death experiences that uh, make you feel like your consciousness has expanded, that you can acquire information from beyond space time, and things that you couldn't possibly know. It seems like there's a potential there with lucid dreaming. It seems like it's an altered state of consciousness, therefore you can receive much more beyond what you're normally privy to. And when you mentioned about remembering past lives through lucid dreaming, I remembered watching the case of a woman who had an NDE on the Coming Home channel, and she basically when she nearly died, she went to what she described as a holding place. First, she thought it was heaven because she felt blissful and joyful, and there was a woman there that seemed like a guide, and she was asking her questions, and she said, "Oh, is this the divine reality?" And the woman said, "No, it's only a holding place to make you feel comfortable." And she said, "I don't want to leave. I don't want to leave." And the woman said, "No, you have to go back." And the woman said, "Don't you remember? You want to go back?" And she said, "No, I don't. Don't tell me what I don't want to do. I want to stay here forever." And the woman said, "Don't you remember that you chose your life, you created your life, you agreed uh, to experience your life, and you've also had many lives." And the minute that the woman told her this, she said communication was different there, was telepathic. The minute that she
Yeah.
received that information, she remembered instantly, and she remembered all her lives, and she realized that who she was on earth, her name is Nancy Rhines, I still remember her name, who she was on earth was just like an avatar, just like
Yeah, kind of a placeholder.
like
Yeah.
an illusion, like a self illusion, so
Yeah.
that she could interact with the world, with Earth realm. But she was much more than just herself on Earth. She was everything. She was part of that oneness. And yeah, it just makes me think. It makes me think about the metaphysics, how it can work, and then there's always a tendency to try and come up with a mechanistic model for how this could possibly work. But perhaps there are no mechanics. Perhaps it's all like an infinite potential that allows for these things to happen. And I wonder about memory. I really do wonder about memory, how it works, how people remember things even in the waking state. We seem to be very limited. We can remember things from years ago in vivid detail, but then we might not remember things that happened like a few minutes or even a few seconds ago. We can't even memorize or remember phone numbers that were shown to us just a few seconds ago. So I don't know what's going on. Perhaps we are, as we identify, like you said, because we identify with being something finite like a human being, maybe we constrict ourselves.
Yeah.
And perhaps, I mean, I don't know, maybe I think NDEs could be glimpses of an afterlife. Perhaps when we pass away, it's like someone said, it's like removing your shoes, like removing tight shoes. It's like, whoa, and then all of a sudden you're freer and you're with the
Right.
oneness. So I don't know, what do you make of this?
Oh no, I think the experiences of NDEs really deserve much more attention,
Definitely.
and especially I would say the more naive the person is, like young children having NDEs, sometimes they'll have profound experiences, and they've never read any books about
It's even more impressive.
a near-death experience or anything like that. It's much more impressive oftentimes. But one thing that I like about physicists is that oftentimes they look at the bizarre natural phenomenon, and from that they have new discoveries occur. And that's one thing that I don't like about the materialist scientists. They are adverse to looking at the bizarre or the rare, like a near-death experience. Well, that's rare, and it must just be the body shutting down and lack of oxygen and yada, yada, yada.
Yeah.
Physicists look at the bizarre and they explore it with an open mind. Materialists, oh, they've already decided it's XYZ and it's of no value. And so I think that's what that would really help, whether it's near-death experiences or remote viewing or, God knows what it is, but
Yeah.
actually beginning to look at some of this data and work that's been done by some incredible people, and just to see, that, it's not 100% accurate all the time, but it meets scientific significance and scientific relevance standards. And even though it's rare and bizarre and
Yeah.
not always the easiest thing to duplicate, still doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. I think really the world would advance much more quickly if scientists had that kind of open mind that they would look into this thing. But yeah, near-death
Yeah.
experiences, just fascinating area.
Yeah, I mean, we're beginning to see some scientists who are open to other interpretations of reality. I've um, I've mentioned Bernardo Kastrup. I don't know if you've heard of
I'm
him.
not familiar with him now.
Yeah, so basically, he says about the brain and mental states. He says, well, correlation isn't necessarily causation, and
Yeah,
obviously he likens the brain to like footprints, and he says footprints isn't the walking. So
exactly.
so it
Yeah,
starts to make sense, and he basically says um, that the brain is what the mental processes of someone experiencing themselves as a human being looks like from a second person perspective. So he's an idealist.
Right.
And then and I extrapolated that to the concept of, someone taught me this word recently, the concept of pleroma. Basically, it's like a reality, a wholesome reality. You can use the word in religious contexts to mean a spiritual or a divine reality, and it's more complete, a bit like Platonism. And
Yeah.
basically, our reality is only an incomplete derivative, or like an illusory projection of that wholesome reality. So when we're experiencing this, we're constricted. So, and when you were mentioning quantum mechanics, I was thinking about the fuzzy nature of quantum physics, and you get
Right.
superpositions of states. So I'm wondering if that superposition of states, if the quantum realm is what the pleroma looks like from a second person perspective, from a human perspective,
Yeah.
and that's why we're so confused, and it seems to defy human logic. I mean, what would you make of that?
Yeah, no, I think you might actually be onto something there. I think that might be a good way of kind of trying to think that one out. But as we were talking about near-death experiences, it reminded me of that there's this other category
Yeah.
that seems to provide evidence, and it's called shared death experiences. And that's when other people in the room spontaneously have a shared death experience. And so obviously, they're not dying, they're not, losing oxygen, they're not all that kind of stuff. But I want to tell you what, this happened with my wife and myself. We had gone to help move her mother from the assisted care to the more intensive care because her mother's health was really failing. And and so, to make a long story short, um, we told her we had to drive back to our home, and so I bent down to give her a kiss. And what was really strange, here's my mother-in-law, 86 or whatever. Suddenly she sits up in bed like a child, and she had spinal stenosis so bad that moving her back, would make her scream with pain. But suddenly she sits up like a child, and I bend down to give her a kiss, and light is shooting out of her face. Just light, like she had swallowed a 60-watt light bulb. Light is just shooting out of her face, and I'm thinking, what is happening here?
Wow.
And so I give her a kiss goodbye, and I step out into the hallway, and then my wife, her daughter, gives her a kiss goodbye. And so when my wife, who has a PhD, comes out into the hallway, I look at her and I don't give her a leading statement. I said, just, did you see what I just saw? And my wife goes, you mean the light coming out of her face? And I go, damn right, there's light coming out of her face. What's up with that? And 3 hours, 3.5 hours later, we get a call from the older sister that mom just passed away, that Nona
Wow.
just passed away. So that's kind of a shared death experience. 3 hours before she actually passed away. But how do you explain that? You know, if we're not lying and we're not doing it, to make money or God knows what,
Yeah.
whatever people would say, how do you explain that two people and one's trained scientist and all that kind of stuff have the same experience, within 30 seconds of each other? I mean, it's just impossible to explain. So
Yeah,
so again,
definitely.
that's why I love that people have the guts to talk about this kind of stuff, because in normal society you can get laughed at and joked at and all that kind of
Yeah.
stuff. But there's a lot of scientists who have the guts. They don't understand it necessarily. They can't explain the mechanism necessarily, but they're saying this phenomenon's happening. And then other people jump on and say, yes, it is happening. And and how do we explain it? And the way to explain it is not to deny it. The way to explain it is to investigate it and
Yeah,
open up to it. So
that's right. No, I really appreciate people like yourself who have this passion to share these experiences with the world, and especially about lucid dreaming, which still not many people know about lucid
yeah,
dreaming.
it's surprising that
It's surprising. It's surprising,
I,
yeah. And
The,
it's a
the,
wonderful tool, isn't it, that you can use to explore yourself, to explore consciousness, to explore reality. And we're constantly learning as we use lucid dreaming. I think I've mentioned to you that I was writing a book years ago. I'm still writing the book,
yeah,
and I'm quite happy to share the book with you when the time is right, because some of the things I wrote in the book uh, were things that I believed to be true about lucid dreaming, but then as it turns out, they were things from belief and expectation. And it made me realize, okay, it's not that. So I'm going to have to. It might take some time before the book is finally finished, and then if it gets published eventually, I might even decide years after the publication that it should be changed or it should be different. I mean, it's a
right.
constant learning process, isn't it? But
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, no, it's, whether it's lucid dream, that's an incredibly long path. A lot of times you think you've gotten to the top of the mountain, and then you realize 6 months later that you're just at a new plateau, and the top of the mountain is five more experiments away. I mean that's just the nature of our life. It's we're all on this educational journey, and so that's why exploring all of this, I think really helps us kind of better conceptualize the true nature of things.
yeah,
And just that for me was what propelled me on as a lucid dreamer. I just wanted to understand the actual nature of things. That's what I wanted to understand. I wanted a firsthand understanding of the actual nature of things. And I'm just so glad that I kept going and pushed through fears and pushed through limiting beliefs and other socially adopted constraints and just kept pushing forward because there's so much to be discovered, but you can't discover it if you yourself are already handicapped with limiting beliefs and a dedication to the societal structure as it currently exists. You've got to go beyond that. If you really want to truly explore when you're talking about the nature of the psyche, you've just got to let that stuff go and venture in.
yeah. Robert, I don't know. Do you feel like going? Thank you so much for your time.
Uh,
I was going to say you have another magazine, don't you? A hardback magazine. It's the Lucid
yeah,
Dreaming.
yeah. Anyone can go to luciddreammagazine.com and it's all for free. You can read past issues. There's always 5 or 6 articles from lucid dreamers. I'll interview an experienced lucid dreamer. And then we have like 15 pages of people who just submit lucid dreams. And some of those are just mind-blowing. They're just incredible. But yeah, my friend Lucy Gillis and I have been doing it for 20 years and it's just one of those resources that we offer. But yeah,
Yeah,
just happy to expand people's minds and just let them kind of dive in wherever they want to.
definitely. And I highly recommend that people buy your books. I recommend your books to everyone, if they want to learn about
Thanks.
lucid dreaming and the potential. So thank you so much for agreeing to do this. And yeah, you're welcome to come back anytime you want, Robert.
Uh, Thanks, Orlando. It's been a
Take
lot
care.
of fun. Thanks for having me.
You too.
Okay.
Take care. Yeah.
Okay.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Here we go.